The next morning, when he woke up and smiled at me with that grateful, sleepy expression, I knew I was doomed. "Thank you," he said softly, "for staying, for taking care of me." "Always," I replied, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. But loving him in secret was torture. Every casual touch, his hand on my shoulder, the way he'd bump into me when he laughed, sent electricity through my system. I started analyzing every interaction, looking for signs that maybe, possibly, he felt something too. The way his eyes lingered on my face, sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. How he'd find excuses to touch me, adjusting my collar, brushing lint off my shirt, those brief moments of contact that left me breathless. But then he'd mention another date, another girl, and I'd crash back to reality. The worst part was watching him with other people. Not just the girls he dated, but everyone. Arian had this magnetic quality that drew people to him. He was kind without being weak, confident without being arrogant. In group settings, he was always the one people gravitized toward. And I was always the best friend on the sidelines, watching him charm everyone while dying a little inside. Sarah Martinez was the worst. She was in his advanced biochemistry class. Brilliant, beautiful, the kind of girl who probably had her life planned out to the minute. She clearly had a thing for Arian, and he seemed genuinely interested in her. "She's different," he told me over coffee one morning, and I wanted to throw my mug across the room. "Smart, funny, we have a lot in common." "That's great. I managed. You should ask her out." Why was I encouraging this? Why was I literally talking him into dating someone else? Because I loved him enough to want him to be happy, even if it wasn't with me, because I was his best friend first, and that meant supporting him even when it killed me. But watching him get excited about Sarah, seeing the way he lit up when he talked about her, was like slow poison. I started avoiding their study groups, making excuses when he invited me to hang out with his other friends. I needed distance before I did something stupid like confess my feelings and ruin everything. I had no idea he was going through his own private hell. Things came to a head at Jake's birthday party. Jake was Arian's roommate, a loud, friendly guy who threw legendary parties in their tiny apartment. I almost didn't go, knowing Sarah would be there, knowing I'd have to watch them together. But Arian had specifically asked me to come, and I'd never been able to say no to him. The party was exactly what I expected. Too many people, too much alcohol, music so loud you had to shout to be heard. I found myself talking to Marcus, a guy from my psychology class, mostly because he was the only person there who wasn't part of Arian's extended social circle. Marcus was nice enough. Cute, even. He was telling some story about our professor's ridiculous grading policy, and I was laughing because it actually was funny when I felt eyes on me. Arian was across the room, standing with Sarah and a group of his pre-med friends, but he was staring directly at me, not casually glancing over. Staring, his expression was intense, almost angry, and I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. When Marcus put his hand on my arm during a particularly animated part of the story, Arian's jaw visibly tightened. He excused himself from his group and disappeared into the kitchen. I should have followed him, should have asked what was wrong. But I was tired of always being the one to chase after him when he was probably thinking about Sarah anyway. Instead, I stayed with Marcus, let him buy me drinks, laughed at his jokes. It felt good to be someone's focus for once, even if that someone wasn't the person I wanted. I didn't see Arian for the rest of the party. When I finally looked for him around midnight, Jake said he'd left early with a headache. That was the beginning of the distance between us, and it nearly destroyed me. The next week was torture. Arian was polite but distant, answering my texts with single words, canceling our usual study sessions with vague excuses about being busy. I tried asking what was wrong, but he just said everything was fine in a tone that clearly indicated nothing was fine. I was losing my mind. Was he mad about something I'd said, done? Had Sarah told him she didn't like me? Was he pulling away because he was getting serious with her and didn't have time for friends anymore? The not knowing was worse than any answer would have been. Thursday night. I couldn't take it anymore. I showed up at his apartment with his favorite Thai food and a determination to fix whatever was broken between us. "We need to talk," I said when he opened the door. He looked surprised to see me, maybe a little guilty. "I'm actually pretty busy tonight." Bullshit. I pushed past him into the apartment. "You've been avoiding me for a week. Just tell me what I did wrong, so I can fix it." He closed the door slowly, not meeting my eyes. "You didn't do anything wrong. Then why won't you look at me? Why are you acting like I don't exist?" "I'm not." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "It's complicated." "Try me?" For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me. His mouth opened like he was about to say something important, something real. But then, he shook his head. I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't. That's when I knew I was losing him. Maybe not to Sarah, maybe not to anyone specific. But I was losing him, and I had no idea how to stop it. Fine, I said, setting the food down harder than necessary. When you decide you can trust me enough to tell me what's going on, you know where to find me. I left before he could respond, and I didn't hear from him for 3 days. Those were the longest 3 days of my life. Which brings us back to that night. The night everything changed. I was lying in bed, scrolling through Instagram for the 100th time, trying not to look at Arian's profile, trying not to analyze his latest post for clues about his mental state. Pathetic? Yes. Effective? Not at all. When my phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m., my heart literally stopped. Arian's name on the screen, followed by words I never expected to see. Are you awake? I need to tell you something. It's important. My hands were shaking as I typed back. Yeah, what's up? Everything okay? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared so many times I lost count. Whatever he wanted to say, he was really struggling with it. Can I call you? Of course. The phone rang immediately, like he'd been waiting with his finger over the call button. Hey! His voice was barely a whisper, hoarse like he'd been crying. Arian, what's wrong? You're scaring me. The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then barely audible. I can't do this anymore. My stomach dropped. Do what? Pretend. Lie. Act like I'm not. Another long pause. Fuck. This is so much harder than I thought it would be. I'd never heard Arian curse before. He was the guy who said, "Gosh darn it," when he stubbed his toe and apologized for minor inconveniences. Whatever was happening, it was serious. Just tell me, I said gently. Whatever it is, we'll figure out. I think I'm in love with you. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat up so fast I got dizzy, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. And I know, he continued quickly, words tumbling over each other in his panic. I know this ruins everything. I know you probably think I'm disgusting now. I know you'll never look at me the same way. But I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I've been pretending for 2 years, and it's killing me. 2 years. The same 2 years I'd been in love with him. Arian, please let me finish. I need to say this before I lose my nerve. His breathing was shaky, like he was having a panic attack. Every time you smile at me, every time you laugh at my stupid jokes, every time you fall asleep during our study sessions, and I get to just look at you, I fall deeper. And I hate myself for it, because you trust me, and here I am having these feelings, these thoughts that I shouldn't be having about my best friend. My throat felt tight. Part of me wanted to interrupt, to tell him he was wrong, that I felt the same way. But I could hear in his voice that he needed to get this out. I've tried dating girls. God, I've tried so hard. Sarah, remember Sarah from chemistry? I took her out 5 times, kissed her twice, and felt absolutely nothing. Nothing. Because all I could think about was you. Sarah, all those months of jealousy, and she had meant nothing to him. I know I'm ruining our friendship. I know after tonight, you'll probably never want to see me again. But I couldn't keep lying. Not to you. Not about this. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. The line went quiet except for his ragged breathing. And suddenly I found my voice. Arian, I whispered. Yeah. Do you remember last semester? When you got food poisoning and I stayed with you all night. Of course, but I don't see what. You were so sick, delirious with fever. And at around 4 a.m., you grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. You pulled me down next to you on your bed, and you whispered, "Don't leave me in your sleep." I took a shaky breath, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it through the phone. I laid there next to you for 3 hours, watching you breathe, holding your hand, and I realized something that terrified me. I realized I didn't want to leave. Not just that night. Never. Silence. I've been in love with you since that morning, when you woke up next to me and smiled before you were even fully conscious. This shy, grateful smile like I was the best thing you'd ever seen. And I knew I was fucked because I was falling for my straight best friend, and there was nothing I could do about it. Are you? His voice cracked. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. 2 years, Arian. I've been in love with you for 2 years. Every girl you dated was torture. Every time you talk about Sarah, I wanted to scream. That night at Jake's party when you looked so angry, I spent the entire next week trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, and all I could think was that I was losing you and I didn't know how to fix it. I heard him inhale sharply, like my words had physically hit him. "You're not losing me," he whispered. "You could never lose me." "Then why have you been avoiding me?" "Because I was falling apart. Because every time I looked at you, I wanted things I couldn't have. Because Marcus had his hands on you, and I wanted to punch him for touching what was mine, except you weren't mine, and you never would be." His voice broke. "Because I was tired of pretending to be straight when the only person I've ever wanted is you." The confession hung in the air between us. 2 years of suppressed longing finally given voice. "Come over," he said suddenly. "What?" "Come over. Right now. I need to see you. I need to know this is real and not some fever dream." I was already reaching for my shoes. "It's 3 a.m., Marion." "I don't care. I've waited 2 years to have this conversation. I can't wait until morning. Please." The desperation in his voice made my decision for me. "I'll be there in 15 minutes." The drive to his apartment was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white, and I kept having to remind myself to breathe. This was really happening. After 2 years of hidden glances and suppressed feelings, we were finally being honest with each other. But what if this changed everything? What if we tried and failed and ruined the best friendship I'd ever had? I pushed the thoughts away. It was too late for what-ifs now. Arian was waiting by the door when I arrived, still in his sleep clothes, wrinkled t-shirt and shorts that made him look younger, more vulnerable. His hair was messy, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. We stared at each other for a long moment, neither of us moving. 2 years of careful distance suddenly collapsed into nothing. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi." Then, without warning, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. Not a casual hug, not a friend hug, but something desperate and clinging and full of 2 years of suppressed longing. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing him in, that familiar scent of his shampoo mixed with something new, something vulnerable and honest. My arms tightened around his waist, and I felt him tremble against me. "I can't believe you feel the same way," he murmured against my ear. "I was so sure I was going to lose you tonight." I pulled back just enough to look at him, my hands still on his shoulders. "You're not losing me. You could never lose me." His eyes searched my face like he was memorizing every detail. When his gaze dropped to my lips, the air between us changed, became electric, charged with possibility. This was the moment, the point of no return. "Can I?" he started, then stopped, his cheeks flushing red. "Can I kiss you?" The question hung in the air between us. 2 years of friendship balanced on the edge of this moment. I nodded, not trusting my voice. What happened next was nothing like I'd imagined during all those late-night fantasies. He moved slowly, giving me every chance to change my mind. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheek with a reverence that made my chest ache. When his lips finally met mine, it was soft, tentative, like he was afraid I might disappear. But then I kissed him back, and something inside both of us broke open. The kiss deepened, became urgent, desperate. 2 years of wanting, of pretending, of lying to ourselves, and everyone else poured into that moment. His other hand fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer, and I could taste salt on his lips, tears I hadn't seen him shed. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, and I could feel him shaking. "Wow," he whispered. "Yeah, wow." We stood there in his doorway, holding each other, and I thought, this is it. This is what everyone talks about. This is what love actually feels like. We moved to his couch, unwilling to break contact completely. I sat facing him, our knees touching, trying to process that this was real, that after 2 years of careful distance, we were finally being honest with each other. "I have so many questions," I admitted. "Like what?" "When did you know? About yourself, I mean. About this." Arian was quiet for a long moment, his fingers playing with the hem of his shirt. "Remember freshman year? Second week of classes? You were struggling with calculus, and I offered to tutor you." "Of course." "Our first study session. You were so frustrated, ready to give up on the entire concept of derivatives. And I showed you this trick my high school teacher taught me, and suddenly it clicked." He smiled at the memory. "You got so excited. You grabbed my face and kissed my cheek and said, 'You're a genius. I could kiss you.'" I did remember that, vaguely, and I thought, please do. Just like that, without thinking. And I realized what I thought, and I panic spiraled for 3 days. 3 days. I convinced myself I was broken, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me for thinking about my friend like that. His voice got quieter. I tried so hard to push the feelings down, dated other people, threw myself into studying anything to make it go away. But it didn't go away. It got stronger. Every shared look, every inside joke, every late night when you fell asleep studying and I got to watch you sleep. He shook his head. I was completely gone for you, and I hated myself for it. The pain in his voice broke my heart. Why did you hate yourself? Because I wasn't supposed to feel that way. My parents had spent 18 years preparing me to be the perfect son. Good grades, medical school, marry a nice girl, give them grandchildren. Being gay wasn't part of that plan. Are you? Gay, I mean, he considered this. I don't know. I've never been attracted to any other guy. Just you. So maybe I'm straight with one very specific exception. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. Or maybe I'm just Ryan's sexual. The joke was so perfectly Aryan, turning something serious into something lighter without dismissing the weight of it. What about you? He asked. Have you always known? Kind of the opposite of you, actually. I figured out I was attracted to guys in high school, but I convinced myself it was just a phase. Experimentation. Normal teenage confusion. I traced patterns on the couch cushion between us. Then I met you and realized I'd been lying to myself about the phase part. This was very much not temporary. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you were clearly straight. You dated girls, talked about girls, never showed any interest in guys. I wasn't about to make things weird by confessing feelings you obviously didn't return. So we both spent 2 years thinking the other was straight. Apparently, we looked at each other and started laughing. Not happy laughter. The slightly hysterical laughter of two people who had just realized how much time they'd wasted being afraid. We're idiots, Arian said, wiping tears from his eyes. Complete idiots. What do we do now? It was a fair question. We'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Change something fundamental between us. Where did we go from here? I woke up on Arian's couch at 8 a.m., sunlight streaming through his windows, feeling more rested than I had in weeks despite getting maybe 4 hours of sleep. For a moment, I forgot where I was, why I was there. Then everything came rushing back. The confession, the kiss, the way we'd stayed up until dawn just talking and holding each other. It hadn't been a dream. Arian was in the kitchen making coffee, humming softly to himself, something I'd never heard him do before. When he saw me stirring, his face lit up with that shy, grateful smile that started this whole thing 2 years ago. Morning, he said softly, bringing me a mug prepared exactly how I liked it. He remembered. Morning. He sat down next to me on the couch, close enough that our shoulders touched. We drank our coffee in comfortable silence, and I marveled at how natural this felt, like we'd been doing this for years instead of hours. So, he said eventually, setting down his mug, what now? It was a question I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Well, I said, turned to face him fully. I was thinking we could start with a proper first date. His face lit up. Really? Really? Tonight, let me take you somewhere nice. But what about... He gestured vaguely. What about everyone else? Our friends? Your family? My parents? And there it was. The fear that I'd known would come eventually. I could see it in his eyes. The terror being found out, of disappointing people, of having to explain something he was still figuring out himself. I took his hands in mine, waited until he met my eyes. Hey, look at me. We don't have to tell anyone anything until we're ready. We can figure this out as we go. All that matters right now is us. You mean that? I mean it. This is our timeline, not anyone else's. He relaxed slightly, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Okay, he said. Yes, I want that. I want to go on a date with you. Good. I'll pick you up at 7. Where are we going? I grinned. It's a surprise. What I didn't tell him was that I'd been planning our first date for 6 months, just in case a miracle happened, and he ever felt the same way about me. I spent the entire day in a state of nervous excitement. I confirmed reservations at a quiet Italian place across town where no one from school would recognize us. I bought flowers, sunflowers, because I remembered him mentioning once that they were his favorite. I even got a haircut, which in retrospect was probably overkill, but I wanted everything to be perfect. At 6:30, I was standing in front of my mirror, changing shirts for the 3rd time, when my phone buzzed. I'm sorry. I can't do this. I'm not ready. My heart sank. I called him immediately. Arian, what's wrong? I'm scared, he admitted, and I could hear the panic in his voice. What if someone sees us? What if this changes everything between us, and it doesn't work out? What if I lose my best friend and the guy I love in one fell swoop? The guy I love, even in the middle of my disappointment. Those words sent a thrill through me. Okay, I said quietly. I understand. You do? Yeah, this is scary as hell. I'm terrified too. But Arian, I sat down on my bed, staring at the flowers I bought for him. I'm not going anywhere. Date or no date, I'm still your best friend. That doesn't change. Silence. But if you're willing to be brave with me, I promise I'll be brave with you. We can take this as slow as you need. We can go somewhere completely private, if that makes you more comfortable. We can stay in and order pizza and call it a date. I don't care what we do as long as we're doing it together. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I was starting to think I'd pushed too hard when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside his apartment. Okay. His voice came through the phone, shaky but determined. I'm coming down. Let's be brave. I looked out my car window and saw him walking toward me, wearing the blue shirt I'd once told him looked good on him, holding his keys like he was still deciding whether to bolt. You came, I said when he got in the car. I almost didn't. I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes trying to talk myself out of this. What changed your mind? He was quiet for a moment, staring out the windshield. I realized I've been letting fear make my decisions for 2 years. Fear of what other people would think. Fear of changing things between us. Fear of being someone I'm not supposed to be. He turned to look at me. I don't want to be afraid anymore. And just like that, I fell in love with him all over again. The restaurant was perfect. Dim lighting, corner booth, far enough from campus that we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. Arian was nervous at first, looking around like he expected someone to jump out and expose us, but gradually he relaxed. This is surreal, he said at one point, shaking his head. 3 days ago, I was convinced I was going to carry this secret to my grave. What changed your mind? About telling me, I mean. He was quiet for a moment, spinning his water glass between his hands, a nervous habit I'd noticed years ago but never found as endearing as I did right now. You remember Jake's party last weekend? I nodded. The one where you disappeared early. I didn't just disappear. I left because I was about to do something stupid. He looked up at me. You were talking to that guy, Marcus, the one from your psych class. I barely remembered Marcus. Some random conversation about an upcoming exam. You were laughing at something he said, and he put his hand on your arm, and His voice dropped. I wanted to punch him, this complete stranger who had done nothing wrong except make you laugh and touch you like he had the right. The jealousy in his voice made something warm unfurl in my chest. That's when I knew I was in too deep to keep pretending. The jealousy was eating me alive. I went home that night and wrote you a letter, pages and pages of everything I'd been feeling. I was going to slip it under your door and then maybe transfer schools to avoid the fallout. What happened to the letter? I chickened out, deleted it, spent the next week avoiding you because I was terrified I'd say something and ruin everything. He reached across the table and took my hand. For the record, I barely remember talking to him, but I remember looking around for you all night. Yeah, you're the only person I want to laugh with. The sincerity in his voice made my chest tight with emotion. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about our fears and hopes, and the future we were tentatively building together. It felt like the most natural thing in the world, and simultaneously, like the most momentous conversation of my life. When we finally left the restaurant, neither of us wanted the night to end. Walk with me? Arian asked, nodding toward the park across the street. We walked through the quiet streets, hands clasped, talking in low voices about everything we've been too afraid to say before. Can I ask you something? I said as we sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. Anything. Are you okay with this? With dating a guy? I know your family is traditional, and I don't want to feel like you have to choose between them and this. He was quiet for so long, I thought I'd overstepped. Then he turned to face me fully. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. And here's the thing. I've spent my whole life trying to be the son they wanted. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect plans for the future. I've never once asked myself what I wanted. And now I want you. I want this. And if that means having difficult conversations with my family or changing their expectations, then that's what I'll do. because the alternative is going back to pretending, and I can't do that anymore. The conviction in his voice took my breath away. I love you, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His eyes widened. Really? Really? I know it's too soon to say it, but I've felt it for so long that keeping it in feels like lying. I love you too, he said softly. I've been wanting to say it since our phone call last night, but I was scared it was too much too fast. We kissed again, soft and sweet under the streetlights, and I thought about how many nights I'd dreamed about this moment. The next few weeks were like living in a beautiful secret bubble. We'd meet for coffee between classes, our fingers brushing when he handed me my cup. Study sessions in the library became exercises in self-control, sitting close enough to catch his scent, watching his lips move as he read, fighting the urge to kiss him right there in front of everyone. But it was the private moments that changed everything. Tuesday nights became movie nights at his apartment. We'd curl up on his couch, ostensibly watching whatever was on Netflix, but mostly just learning how to be physically affectionate with each other. The first time he fell asleep with his head on my shoulder, I stayed perfectly still for 2 hours, afraid to wake him, afraid to break the spell. You could have moved me, he said sleepily when he finally stirred. I didn't want to. He looked up at me with those dark eyes, still heavy with sleep, and kissed my collarbone just once, soft and sweet. It was such a small gesture, but it sent electricity through my entire body. We were learning each other's languages of love. Arian's was touch, not sexual, though there was that too, but casual intimacy. His hand finding mine under the table during study group. His fingers in my hair while I read to him. The way he'd press against my back while I cooked dinner, arms wrapped around my waist, chin on my shoulder. I've never been able to do this before, he admitted one evening as we laid on his bed, supposedly studying but mostly just tangled up in each other. Do what? Touch someone I actually want to touch. With the girls I dated, everything felt performative, like I was playing a role I'd memorized but didn't really understand. His fingers traced patterns on my arm. This feels real. My language was words. I'd always been better at expressing feelings through what I said rather than what I did. I started leaving him notes, in his textbooks, taped to his coffee maker, slipped under his door when I knew he was stressed about exams. Nothing dramatic, just small reminders that someone was thinking about him. Good luck on your biochem exam. You're going to kill it. Or, thank you for last night. Falling asleep next to you is becoming my favorite thing. Or, saw this and thought of you, attached a photo of a dog wearing a tiny lab coat. You know you don't have to sign them, right? He teased one morning, holding up a note I'd left with his breakfast. I know your handwriting. Maybe I like the formality. Maybe you're a dork. You're a dork. The smile that crossed his face when I said that could have powered the entire campus. But we were still hiding. From our friends, our families, the world. And the strain of that secrecy was starting to show. It was hardest around our mutual friends. Jake, Arian's roommate, kept commenting on how weird we were being lately. You guys are acting strange, he said one Friday night when we declined his invitation to go bar hopping. Like, stranger than usual. And that's saying something because you two have always been kind of codependent. We're not codependent, Arian protested, but his cheeks flushed. Dude, you literally have each other's schedules memorized. You finish each other's sentences. Last week I watched you share a sandwich without even discussing it. Just took turns taking bites like you were the same person. I could feel Arian tense beside me. We're just close friends, I said carefully. Yeah, well, close friends don't usually look at each other like you're about to make out. Jake laughed. Seriously, the sexual tension is so thick I could cut it with a knife. The comment was meant as a joke, but it hit way too close to home. Arian went rigid, his face pale. We're not, that's not, he stammered. Relax, man, I'm kidding. Jesus, you'd think I accused you of actual gayness or something. The casual homophobia, even if unintentional, hung in the air like smoke. Arian excused himself to the bathroom and didn't come back for 20 minutes. I found him on the fire escape outside his bedroom window, smoking, something I'd never seen him do before. Since when you smoke? Since I realized my roommate would probably disown me if he knew the truth about us. He took another drag, his hand shaking slightly. Did you hear what he said? Like being gay was the worst thing someone could accuse him of. I sat down next to him, careful not to touch him where Jake might see. He was just joking. He doesn't actually think. Doesn't he? And what about when he finds out it's not a joke? What happens when everyone finds out? The fear in his voice broke my heart. Then we deal with it. Together. What if I can't? What if I'm not strong enough for this? You are. We are. But I could see the doubt in his eyes, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, and it was my fault. We were at the library, ostensibly studying for midterms, but mostly just enjoying each other's presence. Arian had claimed a corner table where we could sit close without drawing attention, and I was watching him work through organic chemistry problems, fascinated by the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated. "Stop staring at me," he murmured without looking up. "People will notice." "Let them." The words slipped out before I could stop them. He looked up sharply. "What?" I said, "Let them notice." Would that really be so bad? I could see him glance around the library, checking to see if anyone had heard. "Keep your voice down." "Why? We're not doing anything wrong." "Ryan." His voice carried a warning I'd never heard before. But I was tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of pretending we were just friends. Tired of watching him flinch every time someone made a joke that hit too close to home. When are we going to stop sneaking around like we're ashamed of this? I'm not ashamed. Aren't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sure looks like you wish this wasn't happening. The hurt that flashed across his face told me I'd gone too far. That's not fair. Isn't it? Jake makes one comment about sexual tension, and you disappear for 20 minutes. Someone mentions dating, and you change the subject. You won't even hold my hand, unless we're completely alone. Other students were starting to look over, drawn by the tension in our voices. "This isn't the place for this conversation," Arian said quietly, starting to pack up his books. "When is the place? Because we never talk about this. We just pretend everything is fine and hope the problem goes away." He stood up abruptly. "The problem? Shit, that came out wrong. That's not what I meant." "No, I think that's exactly what you meant. I'm the problem. My inability to be as brave as you makes me the problem." People were definitely staring now. "Arian, please." But he was already walking away, leaving me sitting there with half the library watching and my heart breaking into pieces. I didn't hear from him for 2 days. Those 2 days were torture. I texted him constantly, apologies, explanations, pleas for him to just talk to me. Every message went unread. I went by his apartment, but Jake said he was dealing with some stuff and couldn't see anyone right now. I was losing him. Again. But this time it was my own fault. On the 3rd day, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited outside his chemistry class, knowing he couldn't avoid me without causing a scene. When he saw me, his face went through several emotions: hurt, anger, resignation. "We need to talk," I said. "Do we?" The coldness in his voice was worse than anger would have been. "Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." He looked around, saw several classmates watching our interaction with interest, and sighed. "Fine, but not here." We walked to the same park where we'd had our first real conversation as more than friends. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I'm sorry," I said as soon as we sat down. "What I said in the library, that came out completely wrong." "Did it? Because it sounded like you think I'm ashamed of you. Of us." "I don't think that. I think you're scared, and I think you have every right to be scared. But I'm scared too, and I took that out on you instead of being supportive." He was quiet for a long time, staring at the ground. "I am scared," he said finally. "Terrified, actually. Because this isn't just about us anymore. If people find out, if my parents find out, everything changes. My relationship with my family, my future, the way people see me, all of it changes forever. I know, and I'm not ready for that yet. I need time to figure out how to be this person, how to be someone who's in love with a man, before I can handle other people's reactions to it." The honesty in his voice made my chest tight. "I'm sorry I pushed. I love you so much, and I want the whole world to know it. I want to be able to hold your hand in public and call you my boyfriend and not have to pretend we're just friends. I want that too. I do. But wanting it and being ready for it are different things." We sat in silence for a while, both lost in thought. "What do we do now?" I asked eventually. "I don't know. I need some space to think, to figure out if I can do this at the pace it needs to be done." My heart clenched. What does that mean? It means I need a few days to decide if I'm brave enough to keep going, or if I need to let you go before we both get hurt worse than we already are. The possibility of losing him felt like a physical blow, and if you decide you're not ready, then I'll have to live with being a coward for the rest of my life. But at least I won't drag you down with me. He stood to leave, and I wanted to grab his hand. to beg him not to go, to promise I'd wait forever if necessary. But I could see in his eyes that he needed this space, needed to make this choice without pressure from me. For what it's worth, I said as he walked away, I don't think you're a coward. I think you're the bravest person I know for even trying this. He didn't turn around, but I saw his shoulders tense. And then he was gone. The next week was the longest of my life. I threw myself into schoolwork, picked up extra shifts in my campus job, did anything to keep my mind occupied, but everything reminded me of him. The coffee shop where we'd had our first real conversation, the library table where we used to study together. Even my apartment felt empty without the prospect of him coming over. I was miserable, but I was also learning something important about love. Sometimes it means giving someone space, even when every instinct tells you to fight for them. On Thursday, exactly 1 week after a fight, my phone rang. Unknown number. Ryan? It's Mrs. Sharma, Arian's mother. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Sharma. Hi. Is everything okay? Is Arian okay? He's fine, physically, but he's been very upset this week, and he won't tell me why. He mentioned you might know what's bothering him. My mind raced. How much did she know? What had Arian told her? We had a disagreement. About school stuff. Nothing serious. School stuff. Her tone suggested she didn't believe me. Ryan, I may be his mother, but I'm not blind. Something is going on between you two, and it's making my son miserable. This was it. The moment of truth. Mrs. Sharma, I think you should probably talk to Arian about this. It's not really my place to. He asked me to call you. That stopped me cold. He did. He said he's been trying to work up the courage to talk to you himself, but he's scared he's already lost you. He said you'd understand what that means. My heart was pounding. Where is he now? Home. He came back for a few days to think things through, but I think what he really needs is to talk to you. She gave me their address, a 3-hour drive from campus. I was in my car 15 minutes later. The Sharma house was exactly what I'd expected. Neat, traditional, family photos covering every surface. Mrs. Sharma answered the door before I could even knock. You made good time. Is he okay? See for yourself. He's in the backyard. I found him sitting under an old oak tree, the same chemistry textbook he'd been struggling with the night we met open in his lap. But he wasn't reading. He was just staring at the pages like they held the answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. Your mom called me, I said, sitting down next to him. I know. I asked her to. Why? He closed the textbook and set it aside. Because I realized something this week. I realized that losing you would be worse than facing whatever consequences come from being with you. My heart jumped, but I forced myself to stay calm. What does that mean? It means I've spent the last 7 days thinking about my life without you in it, and I can't do it. I can't go back to pretending I don't love you. I can't go back to being half alive. He turned to face me fully. I talked to my parents. About us. About being gay. About everything. I felt like I'd been hit by lightning. You what? I told them I'm in love with my best friend. I told him his name is Ryan, and he's smart and kind and patient, and everything I never knew I wanted in a partner. His voice shook slightly. I told him I need their support, because I'm going to marry him someday, if he'll have me. The world stopped spinning. You told him you want to marry me? I told him I want to build a life with you. That hiding from that truth was making me sick. That I'd rather disappoint them by being honest than disappoint myself by being a coward. I couldn't breathe. What did they say? They said they love me no matter what. They said they want to meet you properly. They said it's going to take some adjustment, but they'd rather have a happy gay son than a miserable straight one. I stared at him, trying to process what he was telling me. You came out to your parents. For me. For us. For me, actually, because I realized that being afraid of their reaction was keeping me from having the life I actually want. He reached for my hand, and this time he didn't check to see if anyone was watching. I'm sorry I ran away. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were asking too much. You weren't. You were just asking me to be brave, and I wasn't ready yet. And now I'm ready. I'm ready to hold your hand on campus. I'm ready to tell our friends. I'm ready to stop hiding from the best thing that's ever happened to me. I kissed him then, right there in his parents' backyard, not caring if they were watching from the kitchen window. It tasted like coming home. Does this mean you're my boyfriend now? Officially? I'm your whatever you want me to be. Boyfriend, partner, future husband. I'm yours if you'll have me. The future husband part made my heart stutter. Are you proposing to me in your parents' backyard? Not yet, but someday, when we're ready, when we build something worth proposing over. I kissed him again, deeper this time. I love you, Aryan Sharma. I love you too, Ryan Matthews. And I'm never running away from that again. The first person we told was Jake. We decided to rip the Band-Aid off quickly rather than let our friends figure out on their own. Monday morning, we walked into their shared apartment hand in hand, ready for whatever reaction we got. Jake was eating cereal at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when we came in, glanced down at our joined hands, back up at our faces. Finally, he said, and went back to the cereal. Finally, Aryan asked, confused, Dude, I've been waiting for you guys to figure this out for like 6 months. You were so obvious it was painful to watch. We stared at him. You're not surprised? Surprised you're together? No. Surprised it took you this long? Absolutely. He grinned. I may have even won a bet with Sarah about when you'd finally admit it. You bet on us? $20 that you'd be together before midterms. Sarah said it would take until finals, because you're both disasters when it comes to feelings. Aryan looked mortified. People were betting on us? Friendly betting. And only because it was so obvious you were crazy about each other. Seriously, the longing looks across study group were getting ridiculous. The acceptance was almost overwhelming. All that worry, all that fear, and Jake just didn't care. So you're okay with this? I asked, okay with my best friend being happy? Yeah, I think I can manage that. He rinsed his bowl in the sink. Just don't be gross about it, okay? I don't need to walk in on anything that requires therapy to forget. Aryan was still processing. It was really that obvious. To everyone except you two, apparently. The reactions from our other friends were similarly positive, if occasionally awkward. Sarah hugged us both and said she was thrilled, then admitted she'd been wondering why Aryan had seemed so disinterested when they dated. It all makes sense now. You were never really there, you know? Like you were going through the motions, but thinking about something else. Someone else, Aryan corrected with a smile. Marcus, the guy from the party who'd sparked Aryan's jealousy, took the news with good humor. I knew there was a reason you looked like you wanted to murder me that night. He laughed. I thought maybe you were just really protective of your friends. Something like that, I said diplomatically. Not everyone was supportive. Of course. We lost a few acquaintances, dealt with some awkward conversations and uncomfortable silences. But the people who mattered most rallied around us in ways that made me believe in the goodness of people all over again. The hardest part was telling my parents. Unlike Aryan's family, mine had never been particularly open-minded about LGBTQ issues. My dad made comments about gay people that made my skin crawl, and my mom treated homosexuality like a tragic disease that happened to other families. I called him on a Saturday afternoon, Aryan sitting next to me for moral support. Mom, I have something to tell you. The conversation didn't go well. There was crying, accusations, threats to cut off financial support for school. My dad hung up on me twice. My mom asked where she'd gone wrong as a parent. But a week later, she called back. I've been thinking, she said quietly, and I've decided I'd rather have a gay son than no son at all. It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was a start. 6 months after that first midnight confession, we were living together. It hadn't been planned, exactly. Aryan's lease was up, Jake was moving in with his girlfriend, and it seemed silly to get separate apartments when we were spending every night together anyway. Are you sure about this? Aryan asked as we carried boxes up to our new place. Living together is different from dating. What if you find out I'm actually terrible to live with? What if you find out I leave dirty dishes in the sink and never remember to replace the toilet paper? Do you do those things? Absolutely. He kissed me, right there in the hallway, boxes balanced in our arms. Then I guess we'll figure out together. And we did figure it out, not without bumps. Our first real fight as live-in boyfriends was about whose turn it was to take out the trash, which was both ridiculous and somehow necessary. But every challenge felt manageable when we faced it together. I loved waking up next to him every morning. Loved the way he made coffee for both of us before I was even fully conscious. Loved how he'd study at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner, occasionally reading interesting facts aloud just to hear my reaction. But more than the domestic bliss, I loved watching him become more confident in his own skin. The boy who'd been terrified of holding hands in public now introduced me as his boyfriend without hesitation. He joined the campus LGBTQ Center, volunteered for their peer counseling program. He talked openly about our relationship with his classmates, his professors, anyone who asked. You're like a completely different person. I told him one evening as we walked across campus after Pride planning meeting. I'm the same person. I'm just not hiding anymore. He was right. The confidence had always been there, buried under layers of fear and expectation. Coming out hadn't changed who he was. It had just let him be who he'd always been. The night everything came full circle was almost exactly a year after that first phone call. We were in our apartment, studying for finals, a tradition that had become sacred to both of us. Arian was struggling with advanced biochemistry. I was dying slowly from statistics, and we'd been quizzing each other for hours. I give up, he groaned, throwing his pen down in a gesture that was eerily familiar. I'm never going to understand enzyme kinetics. Yes, you are. You're brilliant, remember? You're the guy who taught me derivatives. He looked up at me with that same frustrated expression he'd worn in the library 2 years ago. What would I do without you? Lucky for you, you'll never have to find out. The exchange was almost word for word identical to one we'd had as friends. But everything else was different. Instead of fighting the urge to touch him, I walked over and pulled him into my arms. Instead of wondering what it would be like to kiss him, I did it. Instead of hiding how much I loved him, I said it out loud. I love you, Arian Sharma. I love your brilliant brain and your terrible study habits and the way you make me want to be better than I am. I love you too, he murmured against my lips. Even when you distract me from studying, I'm helping you take a break. Breaks are important for attention. Is that what we're calling this? I kissed him again, deeper this time, and we both forgot about enzymes and statistics and anything that wasn't a feeling of finally being exactly where we belonged. Later, as we lay in bed talking about everything and nothing, Arian propped himself up on his elbow to look at me. Can I tell you something? Always. That night I called you at 3 a.m., I almost didn't do it. I had my phone in my hand for an hour, typing and deleting messages, trying to work up the courage. What made you finally call? I realized that not telling you was killing me, but the possibility that you might feel the same way was worth the risk of losing you. I rolled over to face him fully. Best decision you ever made? Second best. What was the first? Asking you to move in with me. Building a life with you. My heart swelled with so much love, I thought it might burst. We're really doing this, aren't we? The whole domestic bliss thing. We're really doing this. And someday, when we're ready, we're going to make it official. The promise of someday felt as solid as anything I'd ever known. What I'm about to tell you happened 3 months ago, but I still wake up thinking about it. About him. About the text that arrived at 2:47 a.m. and turned my entire world upside down. If you've ever wondered whether one message can change your life forever, stick around. Because this story will make you question everything you think you know about love, friendship, and the courage it takes to risk it all for someone who might not feel the same way. But first, let me tell you how we met. Because understanding our beginning makes everything that happened later so much more intense. 2 years ago, I was a mess. Not the obvious kind of mess. I still showered, went to classes, pretended to have my life together. But inside, complete chaos. I just transferred to a new university, knew nobody, and was drowning in advanced chemistry courses I probably had no business taking. That's when I met Arian Sharma in the most embarrassing way possible. I was in the library at 2 a.m., surrounded by textbooks, 3 empty coffee cups, and what remained of my sanity. Organic chemistry was kicking my ass, and I had an exam the next day that would determine whether I stayed in my program or switched to something easier like my parents kept suggesting. I must have looked pathetic because this guy at the table across from me kept glancing over. Tall, dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it 100 times, wearing a perfectly ironed button-down even at 2 a.m., the kind of put together that made me acutely aware of my wrinkled t-shirt and the fact that I hadn't brushed my hair in. Let's not count the hours. When I finally gave up and started packing my books with tears of frustration threatening to spill over, he appeared next to my table like some sort of academic angel. Hey, sorry to bother you, but you look like you're about to murder that textbook. His voice was warm, slightly amused. Organic chem? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I'm Arian, pre-med. I've been watching you fight with molecular structures for the past hour. He slid into the chair across from me, without invitation, but somehow it didn't feel intrusive. Want some help? What I didn't know then was at this moment, this random act of kindness from a stranger would become the foundation of the most important relationship of my life. For the next 4 hours, Arian walked me through every concept I'd been struggling with. He had this way of explaining things that made everything click. Like he could see exactly where my brain was getting tangled and knew how to straighten it out. "See? You were overthinking it," he said as I finally solved a problem that had stumped me for weeks. "You're actually really good at this." I looked up at him, this beautiful stranger who just saved my academic career, and felt something shift in my chest. "Thank you. Seriously, you just saved my life." He smiled, this shy, pleased smile that made my stomach flutter in a way I definitely wasn't ready to analyze. "Happy to help. I'm here most nights if you ever need a study buddy." I told myself I took him up on that offer because I needed the academic help. But even then, I think I knew it was more than that. Our friendship developed slowly over the next few months. Study sessions turned into coffee dates, turned into actual hangouts. I learned that Arian was everything I wasn't: organized, driven, the kind of guy who had 5-year plans and color-coded calendars. His parents were doctors, and he'd been groomed for medical school since he was 12. But he was also unexpectedly funny, with this dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. He'd make these random observations about people in the library that had me struggling not to laugh out loud. And he listened, really listened, when I talk about my family, my fears, my completely irrational career anxiety. What I didn't realize was that I was falling for him. Slowly, imperceptibly, one late-night study session at a time. The signs were all there. The way my heart sped up when I saw his name on my phone. How I started caring more about my appearance on days I knew I'd see him. The fact that I'd catch myself staring at his hands while he explained chemical bonds, wondering what it would feel like if he touched me the same way he touched those pages. Careful, deliberate, reverent. But I buried those thoughts deep. Arian was clearly straight. He dated girls, casually but consistently. I'd hear about dinner dates and study dates and movie dates with various pretty girls from his classes. Each story was like a small punch to the gut. But I smiled and offered advice and pretended it didn't matter, because losing him as a friend would have been worse than never having him as anything more. By our second year of friendship, we'd fallen into a routine that felt dangerously close to dating, without actually being dating. Tuesday and Thursday study sessions at the library. Friday coffee before his morning class. Weekend movie nights at his apartment because he had the better TV and actually knew how to cook something besides ramen. I told myself we were just close friends. Best friends, even, but there were moments, like the night he got food poisoning from questionable sushi and called me at midnight, barely coherent, and asking if I could come over. I found him curled up in his bathroom, looking miserable and small in a way I'd never seen before. "I'm sorry," he mumbled as I helped him back to bed. I didn't know who else to call. "Don't apologize. That's what friends are for." I stayed the night, bringing him water and crackers, monitoring his fever. Around 4 a.m., delirious and half asleep, he grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. "Don't leave me," he whispered, pulling me down next to him on the bed. I should have moved to the couch. Should have maintained some boundaries. Instead, I stayed there for 3 hours, watching him breathe, his hand clutched in mine, and I realized something that terrified me. I was in love with my best friend, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. All those months of buried feelings, explained glances, and carefully controlled reactions suddenly made sense. I wasn't just attracted to Arian. I was completely, irrevocably in love with him. I was lying in bed, scrolling through old photos on my phone, when I found a screenshot of that first text from Arian. "Are you awake? I need to tell you something. It's important." 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days since a message that changed everything. Now we were graduating seniors with jobs lined up, an apartment we'd turned into a home, and friends who couldn't remember a time when we weren't together. Arian had been accepted to medical school with a full scholarship. I was starting a graduate program in psychology with plans to specialize in LGBTQ counseling. We'd built a life worth building. "What are you looking at?" Arian asked, emerging from the bathroom with a towel wrapped around his waist. I showed him the screenshot, our origin story. He sat down next to me, still damp from the shower, and studied the message. God, I was terrified. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. Best middle-of-the-night crisis ever. I prefer to think of it as the night I finally got brave enough to go after what I wanted. I set my phone aside and pulled him down for a kiss. Speaking of getting what you want, I reached into the nightstand drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. "I have something for you." His eyes went wide. "Ryan, is that?" "Open it." Inside was a simple silver ring with both our initials engraved on the inside. "It's not an engagement ring," I said quickly, watching his face. "Not yet. It's a promise ring. A promise that when you're ready, I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears gathered in his eyes. "You want to marry me?" "I want to marry you, live with you, fight with you about whose turn it is to do dishes, grow old with you, everything. But only when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline. Just a promise." He kissed me so hard we both fell backward on the bed. "I love you," he said against my lips. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means I'm about to do something that matters. He slipped the ring onto his finger, admiring the way it caught the morning light. "How does it feel?" I asked, like a promise I want to keep. We lay there in the morning sunlight, tangled together, and I thought about everything that had brought us to this moment. The fear, the hiding, the courage it took to be honest about wanting something society said we shouldn't want. But mostly I thought about love, how it finds you when you're not looking for it, how it changes you in ways you never expected, how it makes you brave enough to become the person you were always meant to be. "Hey, Arian?" "Yeah." "Remember when you asked me if I thought one moment of honesty could change everything?" "Of course. I think we proved it can." He smiled, that same shy, grateful smile that had started this whole thing. "Yeah, we really did." And as I drifted off to sleep next to the man I loved, I realized that some stories don't end. They just keep beginning, one honest moment at a time. So here's what I want you to take from our story. Love isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to risk everything for the chance at something real. Sometimes you have to trust that the person you're afraid to love might be afraid to love you back for all the same reasons. That midnight text changed both our lives forever. Not because it was perfectly timed or eloquently written, but because it was honest, raw, real. Because sometimes the scariest conversations lead to the most beautiful destinations. Have you ever had a moment like that? A 3 a.m. confession that changed everything? Have you ever been brave enough to risk a friendship for love? Because here's the secret nobody tells you. The best love stories start with friendship. They start with knowing someone well enough to love them and being brave enough to say so. They start with midnight phone calls and awkward confessions and the terrifying, wonderful decision to stop hiding from the truth. Sometimes the person you've been hiding your heart from has been hiding their heart from you too. Sometimes love is just two people finally getting brave enough to stop pretending they don't want the same thing. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to build a whole life on.